And if you're not sure which set to get for your rifle, give him a call. He'll walk you through it. Great guy, top shelf human being, and he stands behind his products and they speak for themselves. It's not take one, take three, I think. Hey there, folks. How you doing today? Welcome back to the channel, and please bear with any background racket that you might hear throughout this production. We are on location where life happens. There's stuff going on outside that can be heard in here. We're not going to let it stand in the way of the fun that we have in store for you. What kind of fun do we have today? Well, out here on the table in front of me, I'm sure most of you have already spotted our channel favorite, the Ruger M77 Hawkeye guide gun, chambered in 30-06. For those of you that have been following along, you know that this is now, I think this is part 5 officially. It's actually the 6th video on this rifle. More about that in a little bit. If you haven't seen the other videos in the series, I invite and encourage you to check those out. I will put a link to the playlist down in the description of this video. So why are we here? Without covering everything that we covered in the hour plus of content that we already have out on this rifle, suffice it to say that with the help of our friend Morris Milani from Alaska Arms LLC, we got this nice rifle fixed from shooting groups about like that down to shooting groups about like that. So what did we do to fix it? Well, watch the other videos, particularly number 4 really kind of goes in depth on what we actually had to do to fix it. Suffice it to say, we went through a process to hopefully help somebody else out that is having issues with theirs. So why are we here today? Well, as I mentioned, our friend Morris came down all the way from Alaska to East Texas to help us out with the rifle and get it right. But he didn't just show up to fix the rifle. He came bearing gifts. That's right. Before he showed up, I received a package in the mail all the way from Alaska that included this set of his quick release rings for the M77, as well as some of you may have already realized that this rifle has put on a little bit of a pot belly, kind of like me. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Right now, let's focus on the rings. For those of you that are not familiar with what these are, they are a quick release set of scope rings specifically engineered for the Ruger M77 rifle. Why would you want a set of quick release rings? Good question. The scope, as many of you are aware of, is a device used to find what it is that you're aiming at, and typically that comes with magnification. This here is a 3.5 to 10 power scope, which means that depending on where it's set, when you look through it, you're seeing the object either 3.5 to 10 times the size it is in real life. Great for if you are shooting at something that is a long ways off. Really bad if you're out hunting and a grizzly bear charges you. That's where these quick release rings really come in handy. If you look over here on the front of the rifle, and I'll put a close-up as well, this rifle came equipped from the factory with a set of express backup iron sights. Those are there so that you can use them quick, fast, and in a hurry if you need to use them on something that is relatively close to you. So if you've never tried to find a charging animal through a magnified rifle scope, just believe me when I tell you it's not a fun thing to do. So Morris came up with these quick release rings, and before I show you how they work, let me tell you a little bit about him. Morris has been a gunsmith and a machinist for about as long as I have been alive. Just to put it in perspective, he is truly a master of his craft. When I received these rings in the mail, I thought I was looking at a bag full of gold coins. They are just precision. They are money. They are really, really good. You can hold them in your hand and feel the quality, and I'm not making that up. It's like the difference between a Timex and a Rolex. So when Morris showed up and we got the rifle working like it's supposed to, I was itching to go ahead and mount these rings and the little pot-bellied floor plate that you see down there, because I wanted to get his accessories on there while he was here and check them out. But we decided that in the spirit of the troubleshooting process that we've gone through with the series on the rifle, we wanted to see if the work we did to fix the internals would result in correction on its own merit before we put his high-speed accessories onto the platform. Well, if you saw part 4, or part 5 of the video series, then you'll know that in fact we are now getting some really good groups out of this rifle. So once I had everything mounted on the rifle, I could not wait to get back out to the range with it and try it out. But before we head over there, let me show you how these quick release rings work. First, you'll notice here that the levers are oriented to the 3 o'clock position. Simply pop them straight up to the 12 o'clock position, which allows you to rock the scope off of the base. That allows you to access the backup iron sights. Whenever you're ready to put the scope back on the rifle, simply reverse the process and rock it back down into the grooves on the receiver. With a little forward pressure, ensuring the recoil lug is making contact, return the levers to the 3 o'clock position one at a time. That's really all there is to it. So then I headed back out to the range with the rifle and a variety of ammunition, and if you recall from the previous series, Federal PowerShock 150 grain bullets shot really well through this rifle, so that was what I decided to take to try out the quick release feature with it. Now, if you saw there, we just squeezed 3 rounds out of this rifle into a .63 inch group. There's a picture of it right there for reference. 2 of them were touching, 1 of them was almost in there, and it was really good. But then, I did what all of y'all are waiting to see. I actually popped the scope off the rifle. Well, you saw it there. I took the scope off of the rifle, put it back on, fired a round. And it was literally touching the other shots in the group. There was no discernible shift in impact. Now, I got a little cocky and ahead of myself, and I did kick the 5th round out of that group, opening it up to a 5-shot 1.13 inch group. I kind of know that was me. I felt it as soon as I pulled it, and it is what it is. Taking the scope off in the middle of the group at 100 yards, we kept the group just over 1 inch. And there was no discernible point of impact shift after removing and replacing the scope. If you order a set of these rings from Alaska Arms, they come shipped out in a little metal tin that includes a sheet of paper with all the instructions necessary for getting them mounted. Morris did suggest, and I took him up on it, to use this. It's liquid electric tape. It's basically a black rubber goo that electricians use to seal up wires that they've been working on. He said to paint the inside of the rings with it before you set the scope and then torque it to spec. And what that does when it cures is it provides a good solid mechanical bond between the scope and the rings, which would prevent the scope from shifting when it's getting bounced around in a vehicle or with Magnum cartridges being fired through the rifle. This one is just a .30-06, So it's not a Magnum by any stretch, but just know that he suggested it. He's been doing it a long time, so I went ahead and done it. If you're looking for this, you can find it at like Home Depot. It comes in a package like that. But now you might be wondering, does it actually work? Well, while we had the rifle out at the range and after we had played around with taking the scope off and putting it back on, I continued to shoot a couple more groups that were really, really good. I've got it written down over here what we got out of them, and I'll show you. Now, these were some homebrew rounds that I was working up, and in this format, I can't talk about them. I'll include on the Rumble video what they were. I fired the first 4 rounds into a 0.75 inch group. When I fired the 5th round, it kicked out a little bit, almost 1 inch, possibly due to a damaged polymer tip on that round. While I was at the range, I dropped it on the ground and it bent the little pointy tip on the bullet. I just kind of straightened it out and sent it, and it resulted in a flyer. Moving on from there, we fired a second group with a slightly different load.
A few moments later.
and the 5 shots in that group was 1.22 inches. But if you count the 4 that are closest together, they were also sub-minute of angle. So while that might not be the end-all be-all load for the rifle, it does go to show that it is functioning quite well and as it should, now that we've made the corrections to it that we have. And there was no issues with Morris's quick release rings working themselves loose throughout that extended range session. Now, one thing that you may have noticed a little different this time around was, instead of firing the normal 3-shot groups, I was firing 5-shot groups, and there is a reason for that. One of you said on here the other day that 3-shot groups were pointless and you hurt my feelings, so I decided to shoot 5-shot groups. That's not true at all. Well, the guy did say it, but that's not the reason why we did it. The reason we did it was because I was loading the rifle to capacity to test out the pot-bellied feature that we talked about earlier. Morris, in addition to the scope ring, sent me one of his pot-bellied floor plates for the rifle. If you're shooting a rifle in a magnum chambering, that gives you 1 extra round of confidence when you're out in dangerous game territory. And in the case of this 30-06, it increases the total internal capacity to 7 rounds with 1 in the tube. So I was loading it up just to see how well it worked. Morris did suggest, when installing that floor plate on your rifle, that some fitting may be required due to tolerance issues with the M77 platform that we discussed in depth in the other videos. So from the time I started to the time I had it mounted and working as it should was less than 5 minutes, and it didn't require any special tools. We'll leave it at that. If you're watching on Rumble, I'll tell you what I had to do to fix it. Well, I think I've gone on now long enough. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought about it. Were you familiar with these rings? Did you know how they worked? Did you know that he provides them? Did you know the quality that they're made out of is second to none? Let me know down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, I can't tell you where to go to find them, but you could probably figure it out on your own, or just look down in the comment section. Somebody will spill the beans, I'm sure. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.